thank our guests for coming and the crew. As you know, Ron Cornilles is running for Congress, replacing David Wu. And Rollins took time here a few weeks ago to come to tour LEKTRO and meet you guys personally, see the operation. Rollins contacted me last week and said that he'd like to talk about his position on exporting. And LEKTRO came right to his forefront of a company that he used as an example as an exporter. As we know, we've got a tug out there shipping to Oman, number 2 today. And this one was supposed to go to Israel, but due to a fault we found, we held it back. But right now, about 50% of our product is going international, as you guys know. And it wasn't too long ago that 80% was international. So international is a major factor for LEKTRO in our business. And you know, we need the international market, and some of the free trade agreements that are taking place right now are crucial for LEKTRO. So we need them, they need us, and Rob's going to talk about it.
Hey, thanks for coming, and thanks for allowing me to be here at LEKTRO. I'm sorry some of you had to cut out work 30 minutes early. Really apologize for that. But I wanted to just quickly introduce myself for those who I haven't had a chance to meet. Met you last time. But some that I didn't get a chance to meet, or those of you who haven't had a chance to really learn much about our candidacy. First of all, Eric's a good friend. He's becoming a better friend all the time, as he allows me to come and spend time with you and interrupt your work. But he's also a friend because Eric creates jobs. And that's something, quite frankly, that we need more of in this state. And we need more of in this country. Now, there's a lot of people who created jobs. And there's a lot of people who want to create jobs. They want to start a little enterprise. Maybe they've got an idea out of their house. But they're seeing things right now in Washington, D.C. that make them nervous. In fact, it might even prevent them from taking that bold step. And that's why I'm running for Congress. I want to talk a little bit about those things. But some background on me. I say I'm kind of a kindred spirit to Eric because 16 years ago, not quite as old as LEKTRO is, but 16 years ago, I started a business out of my house. I live in Tualatin in Washington County. And my wife, her name is Allison. We've been married 25 plus years. And we have 3 boys. And I came to her one day and I said, I have an idea for a business, an idea to help the industry that I was currently working in. That industry was professional sports. And you may look at me and you might say, yeah, right. And you worked in pro sports? Really, I was an offensive lineman for the New York Giants. And that's the only untrue thing I'll say all day. Actually, I used to work for the Los Angeles Clippers basketball team. What did I do for the Clippers? Well, I worked in the executive offices. And my job was to try to bring people to Clippers games. Not just once, not just twice, but time and time again over the years. And you couldn't wait for the team to play well. That wasn't going to cut it for you, because they never did play well while I was there. But rather, you had to find people, give people a reason, whether it's a family, whether it's someone who has a business, whether it's a nonprofit organization. You had to give them a reason to come to a venue that they might not otherwise be interested in. And once they're there, they achieve a positive result from that experience. That positive result could be memories with the kids or grandkids. A positive result could be, hey, I just won over a new client that I invited to the game that night. It could be we built better teamwork in our office because we came as a staff or as a work crew to a Clippers game after work, and now we like each other better because we entertained with one another. It could be that our nonprofit organization got a little bit of promotion and had some building, some bonding time. All kinds of reasons why people go to sporting events. And that's what we focused on. And as a result of that focus, we started to sell out our games consistently. And we did it through a particular type of methodology. Well, that methodology became known around our league, around the NBA. And then I was invited to go around to these various teams and share with them our strategies. And that led to a business. The thought was, if this thing can work in Clipperville, it can work all over the country. So we moved back to Portland, or Tualatin specifically. My wife and I are both from the area. And we started this thing out of my bedroom, out of my spare bedroom, as I said. Over the last 16 years, we've worked with 400 professional sports franchises and college athletic departments in best business practices. Just as Eric knows best practices for this industry, I know a little something about best practices for that industry. And those 400 clients have allowed me to do what I wanted to do early on, and that is expand, grow. Now, when a small business owner says they want to grow or expand, what does that mean? Well, some people would perhaps villainize them and say, well, they just want to make more money. In my case, I wanted to hire people. I wanted to bring more people into the fold, so to speak, and give them an opportunity to work in an industry they love and to have fun and, yes, be prosperous. And over the years, GameFace has hired about 60 people in 16 years. We don't have nearly as big a shop as you do. We've never been this big all at one time. But we've had 60 people for 4 years. Hopefully they all left better than we found them. And we've also, over the years, been able to create 500 jobs. 500 jobs for people all over the country who wanted to work in our industry. In fact, just on the way up here today, I was speaking to one of those gentlemen. He works for the Houston Rockets. He came to GameFace many years ago wanting to work in sports. I trained him on the things that we do in our industry to be successful, and today he's a vice president of the Houston Rockets. When I saw him, nobody would take a phone call from him. Nobody would even look at his resume. So when Eric talks about creating jobs, it's something I understand, because I had the good fortune of doing that as well. Again, for more than 500 people around the country. Now, why do I bring this to you today? Because, quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, what's going on in Washington today is preventing people like me and like Eric and others who are here from taking risk and thinking that that risk might turn into something positive someday. And so, as they say, a lot of people in this country, and certainly in Oregon, rather than invest in maybe growing their operation and bringing on 2 or 3 more people or 2 or 3 new products or services, they're sitting on their hands. Why are they sitting on their hands? Because for one, they don't know what the tax ramifications will be of hiring more people. They don't know what kind of regulations they'll have to work around or work through. They don't know also what health care is going to look like. Since most employers do want to provide some form of health care to their people, they don't know what the costs are going to be. They don't know what government's going to mandate or force them to do as it relates to health care. There's all these uncertainties out there. Now, uncertainty is great at a sporting event. That's what makes it fun to watch. You don't know how it's going to end up. It's also very interesting in theater and television and movies. But in business, it just kills you, uncertainty. You have to have predictability. You have to be able to know what's around the corner, not just 12 months from now, but hopefully 5 years from now, or 10 years from now. And one of the other reasons why a lot of companies in Oregon are not expanding is because we are a very trade-dependent state. And Eric just mentioned that. 50% of your customers, your clients, Israel, Oman, and others, they rely on you. But if you have a government that is not being friendly towards those potential trade partners, those countries, then it obviously stifles your ability to grow and expand. Now recently, as most of you probably know, the federal government, specifically Congress, passed what we call free trade agreements between the U.S. and South Korea, Colombia, and Panama. I have been arguing for years that we have to pass these free trade agreements faster. Why? Well, these particular agreements have been sitting on the president's desk for more than 3 years. And they even began in the previous administration, in the Bush administration. These trade agreements are agreements. They mean that the U.S. wants to do more trade with these countries, exports and imports. And both sides agreed to adhere to the rules of the game. And that had been determined years ago. But too many people in Congress didn't think, or specifically the executive branch, the president, didn't think it would be helpful for our country. Well, a few weeks ago, he, frankly, changed his tune. He said, you know what, I realized these free trade agreements would actually grow jobs. So he sent the legislation up to Congress on Capitol Hill, and they voted to authorize it, and now we have more countries that can buy LEKTRO equipment. Now here's the sad fact. I'm the only candidate running for Congress in the 1st District that has been a proponent for these free trade agreements. I have 2 on the Democrat side who have absolutely said, no way, these free trade agreements are bad for Oregon. And the 3rd on the Democrat side who says essentially she hasn't made up her mind yet. Now, ladies and gentlemen, these things have not only been out there for years, they were passed 2 weeks ago, and someone hasn't made up their mind how they would have voted, and they're running for Congress to be your representative? I call that finger in the wind politics. I'm just trying to wait and see what's politically expedient before I make a decision. We don't need that anymore. We had that. That guy resigned. We need someone who represents this district who understands how strong trade agreements can be to grow this economy. Not only for your business, but for others in your neighborhood, in your community, and all throughout this district. Let me be clear though. It doesn't mean that we just pass trade agreements just to pass trade agreements. It's not trade at any cost. As I said earlier, you've got to hold your trade partners, you've got to hold their feet to the fire. If they break the rules, then there needs to be a consequence for that. That's what the agreement is for. And that's what you rely on the administration to enforce when those agreements are not being adhered to. So, you're not the only business. There are 270,000 jobs in the Portland region that rely on international trade. The 50 or so employees at LEKTRO are among those 270,000. You know what the biggest employer is in the 1st District probably? Intel. 15,000, soon to be 16,000 employees. Every single one of those jobs at Intel relies on international trade. Nike is number 2, 6,000 employees. Every single one of those employees relies on international trade to grow that business. Columbia Sportswear, number 3, 5,000 employees. I just got a phone call today, which I missed, from the chairman of Columbia, talking about trade. Every one of those jobs relies on international trade. SolarWorld, Genentech, all of these big companies in this congressional district. So for anyone to suggest that they don't like free trade agreements, they don't understand the 1st District, unfortunately. That's why I'm asking for your support today. I do understand the 1st District. I've lived here practically my whole life. I understand what it takes, not only to make sure you have a job, but if this is important to you, it's important that your kids have a job when it's time for them to maybe take your spot on LEKTRO, or maybe to start their own business. Because LEKTRO needs all kinds of support companies, locally and of course across the country, to support what you do. And those companies rely on trade as well. I have 3 sons, as I mentioned. 2 of them are in college. And I really fear that when they're ready to graduate, there's not going to be as many opportunities for them. And there's not going to be a chance for them to say, maybe someday at their kitchen table, hey, I'd like to start a business. I'd like to partner with my buddy across the street and start a business. Or my old roommate from college. Why? Because they will not have the kind of certainty that Eric and his family have had historically, and that I had in 1995 when I started my business. We owe it to ourselves to take an active role in paying attention as to what's going on in Congress, because it affects you. It affects your livelihood. It affects your paycheck. It affects the schools that your kids and grandkids attend. It affects how strong your community here is in Warrenton and Astoria. I'm paying close attention now. I'm asking you to do the same thing. If you haven't registered to vote, you won't be able to vote in this primary, but register for the general election. Make your voice be heard. Don't let someone else dictate your future. You don't need to let that happen. You can actually decide what kind of economic and social future you want to have by getting involved as your owner has. And I give him tons of credit and my respect and admiration because he has stood up and said, this matters to me. It matters to my employees. It matters to their future. And one other thing I'd like to say, and then if you have any questions, anyone, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them. And that is simply, if you've paid a little bit of attention, like a lot of people have in this district, you know that we're currently without a congressman. We're the only congressional district out of 435 in this country that doesn't have a representative right now. The only one. And I find that shameful. We're better than that. We deserve more than that. And why don't we have a congressman? Because too many voters didn't pay attention last time. And they elected someone who was underserving us. And that's a kind way of describing it. I'm asking you to pay attention. I'm asking you to also raise your expectations of what your congressman should be and what your congressman should do. I think your congressman should be someone that your kids can look to and say, you know what? I'm now not cynical anymore about politics. I grew up watching Mark Hatfield. I grew up watching Vic Atiyeh, Tom McCall. These people, in my mind, were models of public servants. We've lost that somewhere along the way. And that's why 9% of the American population approves of Congress today. So if you could raise your expectations of what your congressman should be, if you could raise your expectations of what we can do for you, then you and I are going to be on the same page. Because I've elevated my own expectations of what I should be and what I should do for you. I may not always satisfy you. I'm sure there will be times when even Eric and I will disagree on things. Heck, my wife and I don't agree on everything. But as long as you know I'm working hard for you, as long as you know that I understand what matters to you, as long as you understand I'm going to use best judgment at all times and truly try to be a public servant rather than just try to serve the interests of people back in Washington, D.C., and I think you and I will understand each other. I'm a small business owner. I'm not a career politician. I don't know how to play those games. I'm not interested in playing. I'm interested in making this a better place for you and your kids and your grandkids because I've chosen to stay here. You've done the same thing. We owe it to them to do all we can. This is a wonderful opportunity with this special election to turn this thing around starting in Oregon. And I hope to join me. So does anyone have any comments or questions? Comments are just as valuable to me, by the way. Please. Well, the claim that as I understand it, and I don't want to speak for them in detail, I can just, by the way, I debated the three of them this morning in Beaverton, or in Tigard, excuse me, at the Embassy Suites Hotel. So I heard it as recently as this morning. The two who are adamantly opposed to free trade agreements believe that it will export jobs rather than product. Well, I'd like them to meet Eric Paulson, because that's not going to be the case. The third believes that by talking more to voters, she'll understand whether or not you like trade, and then she can represent your interests. Well, to me, that's a nice out. The fact of the matter is she's been an elected official for many years in the Beaverton community, 1st District, Washington County. If she doesn't know by now if trade is good for this area, she hasn't been paying attention. Therefore, I don't think she's qualified to be your congressman. So, some people want to have it both ways. They want to say, well, I'm for trade, but then I'm not for trade. That's what I call finger in the wind politicians. Stand for what you believe in. Stand up for your district. Recognize, yes, trade agreements aren't always perfect, But that's why we have the executive branch, the administration, to enforce them and make sure the other side is playing by the rules. But we have to move forward. Our economy demands it.
They say China's not.
That's right. And China needs to be held accountable for it. But does that mean that we immediately shut down all trade with China? That would be devastating to our economy. So we rely on the executive branch to do their job and to enforce those rules and those agreements properly and quickly, because your livelihood depends on it. Any other comments or questions?
Comments about certainly growing and starting a business.
Yes, sir.
This point that is available in capital. We have heard the banking industry and we should try to keep them afloat and created what was supposed to have been a flow of dollars come back out into what's happening. My friends are in small businesses. They try to get back on that. Their collateral is lost. Some value in the last few years. They're unable to start chipping in.
It is. It's a very good point. Certainly when the markets got nasty about 3 or 4 years ago, and the recession really hit us immediately, the banks just kind of clammed up, didn't they? And in large part, they kind of had to because capital was hard to find. Then Congress, like they often do, says, well, we can fix this. So they began to pass some additional regulations on lending institutions so that they couldn't just quickly give out loans and lines of credit, etc. One of those regulations is something that's called the Dodd-Frank bill. It was passed more than a year ago. The Dodd-Frank bill was essentially a way of, well, first of all, I should tell you, it was 2,000 pages thick. A law, 2,000 pages thick. I don't even know if you have any manuals that are nearly that thick on how to construct one of your tugs. 2,000 pages of law. Now that's just the law, and it was for the financial services industry, which you're describing, banks, etc. But then when that law was passed and handed over to regulators, bureaucrats, now they have to write regulations to adhere to that law. Those regulations are about 20 times that volume of paper. So here's what's happening right now. Because Congress decides they want to come in and fix something, as they typically do, they go too far on one side. They overcorrect. And now, all the financial institutions, because they don't know if through the compliance of Dodd-Frank they can lend, they too are sitting on their hands. Because they also find that through the Dodd-Frank bill, they have to require more to the small businesses, to the startups that are coming to them and asking them for a loan. And so now everything's just clogged up. Everything's just kind of tangled like a big ball of yarn. And that's why capital is not freely flowing. Now, I actually just this week spoke to a particular bank and I asked them your exact question. I said to them, I'm hearing from a lot of people who want to start a business, people who want to expand their business, add a new wing to their business, open up a new product. I'm hearing from them that they can't get loans from you guys. I'm hearing from Washington that they should be getting loans from you. What's going on? And they said, you know what? In some cases, we don't have right now the wherewithal to take the kind of risk we used to take. Because we're hurting as well. But this bank said, we only profit as a bank or a lending institution if we loan money. That's how we make money. So it's in our interest to loan it out. But if we have so much regulation that our lawyers are still not being able to figure out what it all means, we have to stand back. We have to say to the small business owner, sorry, we're not ready to loan to you yet. We don't know what the ramifications will be. So my proposal, and I'm not alone in this, is we need to simplify. We need to simplify the process. Have more trust in the American people. But right now, everybody's a villain out there, according to some people in Washington. And I don't believe that. I don't believe this guy's a villain. I don't mean to pick on you, Eric, But I believe if Eric's left, if he's largely left to do his business as he knows it best and as he sees fit, this will be a prosperous, good place to work. I don't believe someone 3,000 miles away should be telling Eric how to run his business. I trust him, and I trust thousands like him. Yeah, there are some bad apples out there. We'll have to deal with those. But I don't believe Congress is the answer. I believe the American people, entrepreneurs, investors are the answer. And I want to be their champion. I want to be their advocate. Yes, sir.
One last?
Yes, sir.
One last, sorry, we're gonna have to.
Go ahead.
Well, I just, about an hour ago, I was watching Fox News, which is one that I'm watching back. And, one of the senators, Democratic senator, was on and was asking about the home mortgages. And he's advocating that everybody that's underwater, home mortgages, should file for bankruptcy. Now, he's on Fox News saying that this would be the way to straighten this out, because you bring banks back into play. They can get the payments sorted, their interest sorted. And I just can't believe that this is the way to approach this sort of thing, and another reason why the banks are set back.
Well, obviously, I didn't hear the story that you're alluding to. So I probably won't comment on that particular proposal from that particular senator, who I don't know who you're referring to necessarily. But I do think, I share your feeling that we need a sense of responsibility. People need to be responsible for their actions. Those who don't play by the rules need to be held responsible for it. Those who are working hard, and we've seen a lot of those people in this economy, who need some additional assistance, either to start a business or to keep a business afloat, those people also need fair consideration. I don't believe the extreme on either side is the answer. And that's why I find so many people right now are supporting my candidacy. In fact, I'll let you know as we wrap up, we have 18 mayors in this district, 18 who have already stepped forward and endorsed me. And these are Republican and Democrat mayors. Why do they endorse me? Why have nearly 60% of the mayors in this district said, Rob Cornilles is our guy? Because they recognize what's hurting their communities most. And that is a loss of jobs, or jobs that aren't good enough to sustain families and communities and schools. And they believe that I'm the person that can help to resuscitate the economy here. I can't do it alone. I can do it with their help. I can do it with county commissioners' help. I can do it with business owners' help. Mostly, I do it with people like you. Just people who just want a better life for their kids and their grandkids. You can help us in many ways. I hope you'll go to my website, cornillesforcongress.com, read up more about my background, but more importantly, read up more about how I view the issues, the ones that matter to you especially. And then I hope you'll decide to get involved. Not only vote, but I'll challenge you, get 5 other people to vote for me. That would be a big help to me.
Well, can you address one quick issue? I know this is big for our employees, is healthcare, and what you foresee. That, I mean, with everybody, that's a major factor for us from a cost point of view. It's a major factor for employees.
You bet. Well,
And that'll be it.
I did not support the bill that was passed a year and a half ago, the Affordable Care Act, which is now the law. I didn't support it, and here's one major reason. There are many reasons, but here's the major reason. It didn't address the cost of health care. It addressed access to health care. By that I mean, through that law, everybody apparently is supposed to have access to health care. But here's the way I look at it. Let's say you all want to go to a Portland Trailblazers game, or an Oregon State Beavers game, but the price is $100 a ticket. Well, you say, gosh, I can't afford that. Are you kidding me? Therefore, you don't have access to the game. But if I went to the Oregon State Beavers, I went to the Trailblazers, and I said, well, look, let's be reasonable. Let's find a way to lower that ticket price to $25 a person. Sooner or later, you're going to find access to that game. You want more people to enjoy the game? Lower the cost. Then everybody has access to it. The same is true in healthcare. So what I have pledged is I want to go back to Washington and find ways to lower the cost. Because I know as my small business, Our premiums are going up anywhere between 12, 16, 22% a year. I talked to a gentleman this week who told me his premiums in 1 year went up 45%. That's unpredictable. You can't run a business if you don't know what your health care costs are. How do you lower costs? Very quickly. There's several ways. Very quickly. First of all, you let people buy and use health care across state lines, just like you do car insurance. We can't do that, which means the price goes up. You also reward people for good health. You also make sure that lawsuits against doctors are not frivolous and excessive. Because I know many doctors who will send you to go get 2 more tests or 3 more procedures, even though they're 99% sure they know what's wrong with you, because they're afraid you can sue them. And so your costs go up. And there's many other ways to reduce health care costs. I'll just share with you one last thing as I step off the tub. There's an organization that I'm on the board for. It's called Virginia Garcia. Virginia Garcia is what we call a community health center. They're all over the state and certainly all over the country. We have 129 community health centers in Oregon. Virginia Garcia is the name of 6 of them. I'm on their board. Why? Because I believe they're a good model that we ought to be emulating around the country. A Virginia Garcia Community Health Center is a place where low-income or no-income individuals who need health care can come. They sit down with the person at the desk and they say, I really need health care right now. I need treatment, I need preventive care, I'm about ready to have a baby, whatever the case may be. And the person says, fantastic, how can you help pay for this? And they work out a payment plan with this individual. Not for insurance, but for care. And then, whatever that person can pay, the rest is made up through Medicaid, the rest is made up through Medicare, the rest is made up through private donations, and other forms of funding. But it actually puts the patient in the seat of, you know what, I gotta take care of myself and be responsible the best that I can. An average emergency room visit to a hospital in Oregon right now, the cost is $1,900. But if you go to Virginia Garcia or such a clinic like that, in the course of a year, you pay $765. It's obvious which side, normal health care at the emergency room or a community health center, which is community controlled, which side is more affordable. Those are the kinds of programs we need to be championing back in Washington, D.C. And I can't wait to do it. To make sure that you have more predictability in your health care costs also. So thank you very much for sticking around and visiting with me. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for your vote as well.
Thank you. Take care.